Imagine walking into your boardroom, right? Just opening up a briefcase and calmly setting $26.8 billion on fire.
Just burning it.
Literally just burning it. And no one stops you. In fact, the executive team just watches the smoke clear. They nod at a heavily sanitized PDF report, and they consider it a completely successful quarter.
Yeah, business as usual, basically.
Exactly. Because, according to the latest data, that is exactly what enterprise leadership is doing this year with their programmatic advertising budgets. It's this massive, largely invisible crisis. So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We're talking directly to you today, the strategic thinker, the enterprise leader who is actively looking for a competitive edge. Because we're exploring this black hole in the programmatic supply chain that is just quietly devouring corporate capital.
It is a phenomenal amount of capital leakage.
Yeah.
I mean, what's crucial to establish right away is that this isn't just a rounding error. It's not a temporary glitch in some software update. This waste is actually a structural feature of the modern enterprise marketing system.
So it's built this way.
Exactly. The system is functioning flawlessly according to its own design. It just, it wasn't designed to benefit the advertiser.
Which brings us to a really interesting contrast, I think. Because usually when you talk about building a corporate supply chain, there's this expectation of absolute physical precision.
Sure, like manufacturing.
Yeah, like engineering a suspension bridge, right. You buy 1,000 tons of steel, the manifest shows exactly where that steel was mined, how it was forged, and the site manager just points to the scaffolding and says, there it is.
You can see it.
Right. But then you step into the world of digital advertising, and suddenly that cargo ship just vanishes off the radar. The tracking system is, it's completely broken.
Yeah, you lose the ability to just walk up and knock on your investment with your knuckles.
I like that. Knock on the investment.
Right, because enterprise leaders, they generally expect capital to be visible, categorized, and tracked literally down to the penny. I mean, if you run logistics for a major retailer, you know the exact GPS coordinates of a shipping container in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Of course you do.
But in programmatic media, you are effectively blindfolded.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to give you a very practical, step-by-step audit plan.
We need to get actionable here.
We do. We want to uncover exactly how to identify this waste, how to reclaim the lost capital, fundamentally shift targeting strategies, and, this is the crazy part, even deploy physical enterprise hardware to enforce digital truth on your network.
Which is going to blow some minds later on.
It really is. But before we get to the solutions, we have to look at the sheer scope of the destruction. We're pulling from the Q2 2025 Programmatic Transparency Benchmark Report. This is by the Association of National Advertisers, the ANA.
And the ANA's findings are, frankly, a massive wake-up call for any CFO or CMO listening. Over just a 2-year period, waste in programmatic ad spend climbed by 34%.
34% in 2 years.
2 years. Back in 2023, the industry was looking at roughly $20 billion in waste. And by mid-2025, that number surged to $26.8 billion.
Man.
That is capital flowing into completely inefficient, completely non-productive channels.
26.8 billion with a B, just evaporating. And to really grasp how that happens, we have to tear apart what the industry calls the cost waterfall, which, it sounds refreshing, but it's a structural nightmare.
It's a very polite term for a shakedown.
That's a good way to put it. Let's trace a single dollar. Say I'm a CMO, right? I allocate $1 into a demand-side platform or a DSP to run a campaign. Out of that dollar, how much actually reaches a publisher to display an ad to a human being?
36 cents.
Wait, really? Just 36 cents?
That is the stark reality of the transaction waterfall. The remaining 64 cents is systematically extracted by the supply chain before an ad ever even has the chance to render on a screen.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm grasping the scale of this. If I'm handing over $1 and the publisher is only getting 36 cents, I need to know exactly who is pocketing the change. Where is the first cut happening?
Well, the extraction breaks down into 2 main buckets. The first bucket is the ad tech intermediary transaction fees.
Okay, like tolls.
Exactly. These fees consume approximately 29% of your total programmatic spend. So when your dollar leaves the DSP, it doesn't go straight to a website. It gets routed through data brokers, supply-side platforms, ad exchanges, measurement vendors.
All taking a slice.
Every single one. Each node acts as a toll booth on the digital highway, just taking a percentage of the transaction.
But why are there so many middlemen? I mean, I thought the whole point of programmatic was automated efficiency. Instead, it sounds like we've built the most bloated financial bureaucracy possible.
That really is.
Because if I bought $1 of groceries, right, and the store manager kept 64 cents at the register for, I don't know, processing and routing, and handed me a bruised 36-cent slice of an apple, I'd never go back. I'd call the authorities.
Oh, you would riot. But this bloated bureaucracy exists because of extreme fragmentation. Everyone built a platform to solve one tiny sliver of the digital transaction, and now they all demand a cut.
Right.
And that tech tax is just the beginning. I mean, that 29% only gets us down to 71 cents.
Right. We still have to account for the massive drop down to 36 cents. So what is the second bucket?
The second bucket is, it's even more insidious. Another 35% of your total budget is completely wasted on low-quality media.
Low quality meaning what exactly?
Meaning unmeasurable inventory, invalid traffic, which, by the way, is just the industry's very polite term for bot farms, and what we call made-for-advertising websites, or MFAs. You are literally paying to serve ads to empty rooms and automated scripts.
Wow. And we are absolutely going to tear into the mechanics of those MFA sites shortly. But just lingering on these A&A metrics for a second, the report introduces two specific indices that every executive needs to understand. The first is the True Ad Spend Index.
Right, the True Ad Spend Index. So this measures the portion of your dollars that are actually turning into working media.
Meaning real ads seen by real people.
Exactly. Media that has a legitimate chance to be seen by a human being. In Q1 of 2025, that index sat at 41.0. By Q2, it had dropped to 37.0.
Ouch.
That downward trend is a glaring warning sign.
Yeah.
It physically means that the pipes of the internet are just getting leakier.
And then there's a true CPM delta. Now, anyone listening who manages a budget knows what a CPM is, right? The cost per 1,000 impressions. But this delta concept is, it's different.
Very different. It measures the illusion of your reporting.
The illusion.
Yeah, the true CPM delta is the gap between the CPM you think you are paying on your pristine dashboard and the cost of the actual true impressions delivered to human beings in a viewable environment.
And what's the gap right now?
Currently, that delta sits at a massive 36.5%.
Let me translate that into a physical scenario for you. That means if I sign off on a campaign believing I'm paying $10 to reach 1,000 real prospects, I am actually paying closer to $13 or $14 for those same human eyeballs.
Precisely.
Because a third of my budget was secretly routed into a void. I'm paying a premium, but I'm getting phantom scale.
Exactly the problem. The programmatic industry promised algorithmic precision at this massive scale. But the reality is that campaigns suffer from a severe proliferation of inventory. The ANA found the average programmatic campaign is scattering its budget across an astonishing 44,000 different domains.
45,000 websites for a single campaign? That's just noise.
It gets worse. It goes higher. There are documented cases from the media analysis firm Ubiquity where they identified a client's campaign running across 400,000 unique domains in a single market.
Wait, 400,000 in one market? That is statistically absurd.
It makes no sense.
There aren't 400,000 high-quality, brand-safe websites in a single market that align perfectly with a specific brand's target audience. It implies the algorithms are just, like, throwing paint at a wall.
They are optimizing for cost efficiency rather than value. That's the secret. The DSP algorithms are literally designed to hit a volume target. They buy the cheapest possible impressions to make the dashboard look successful at the end of the month.
So they hit the metric but miss the goal.
They satisfy the KPI, absolutely, but they deliver zero actual business value, which brings up a really critical behavioral question. Why do the smartest CFOs and CMOs in the world tolerate this?
Well, I'll tell you why they tolerate it. Because it's invisible to them. The whole system is built on intentional information asymmetry. This isn't a bug. It's the core feature of the business model.
The incumbent advertising agencies, the ad tech vendors, they maintain their massive profit margins by heavily restricting data access. To actually prove this waste, an advertiser needs to conduct a deep audit using log-level data.
And let's clarify what log-level data actually is, because you hear it thrown around a lot. We aren't talking about a nice summary chart here.
No, good line out.
Log-level data is the raw, unvarnished, granular record of a single digital event. It contains the timestamp, the IP address, the device ID, the exact URL the ad loaded on, the bid price, and the win price. It is the itemized receipt for every single fraction of a penny you spent.
But agencies actively resist providing it.
Always.
Always. Instead, they offer these aggregated dashboards and heavily sanitized PDF reports. They'll show you, total impressions and a blended cost per acquisition. But when you ask for the raw log-level data required to run an independent audit, the doors just close.
They shut you out.
Completely. According to Ad Exchanger, when the ANA tried to conduct their study, 69% of the participating companies had to drop out. Why? Because their own agencies refused to give them access to their own data.
That is corporate hostage-taking. You hire an agency to buy media with your money, and they literally refuse to show you the receipts. I mean, the immediate reaction from a non-technical leader is going to be, why doesn't the CMO just slam their fist on the table and demand the data? They control the budget.
Well, think about the internal corporate politics of doing that. Imagine you are the CMO.
Okay, I'm the CMO.
You have stood in front of the CEO and the board of directors for the last 4 years, presenting these beautiful slides about the incredible scale, reach, and efficiency of your programmatic campaigns.
Taking all the credit.
Right. And if you suddenly demand a log-level audit, and that audit proves you've been wasting, say, 23% of your online budget on bots and clickbait, what happens to your career?
Oh, executive leadership slashes your marketing budget for the next fiscal year because you basically just proved you didn't need a quarter of the money they gave you.
Precisely. The CMO hesitates to rock the boat because there is a profound psychological fear of uncovering the truth.
It's self-preservation.
It is. Furthermore, the marketing team relies on that partner agency to launch their next major product campaign next month. You don't want to start a legal war with the people holding the keys to your upcoming product launch.
But wait, what about the legal department? Because in-house counsel reviews every vendor contract, right? Shouldn't they be catching this? Shouldn't there be an ironclad data ownership clause?
You would think so. But in-house legal counsel typically lacks the highly specialized technical context required to understand the programmatic supply chain.
They're looking for standard stuff.
Exactly. They're looking for standard liabilities, indemnification, basic data privacy compliance like GDPR. The ad tech system is so dense with jargon concepts like bid shading, dynamic floor pricing, header bidding, that many lawyers simply don't know how to draft the specific transparency clauses needed to secure log-level data rights.
So the budget just leaks out through a structural trapdoor that legal didn't even know existed.
Exactly. This perfectly illustrates the quiet architect philosophy mentioned in the sources. The idea that obscurity protects incumbents.
The quiet architect. I love that term.
It's very fitting. The quiet architect recognizes that the most critical system failures in an enterprise don't look like explosions. They look like small, perfectly acceptable exceptions hidden deep inside a dashboard.
Just a little line item.
Right. The ad tech intermediaries build a machine so complex that it generates natural opacity. And that opacity actively protects their extraction rates.
Okay, we've diagnosed the disease. We have a structural efficiency gap masked by intentional data opacity, terrified executives, and outmatched lawyers, and it is costing billions.
Millions.
Now we transition to the cure. Because if we are building a practical audit plan for you today, the very first move, the lowest effort change with the highest immediate return, is eradicating made-for-advertising sites, or MFAs. Let's tear into the mechanics of what these actually are.
Yeah, let's do it. Made-for-advertising sites are pure digital arbitrage vehicles. They're not built for human consumption.
No one is reading them.
No one. Their sole architectural purpose is to hijack ad impressions and maximize ad revenue.
I think everyone listening has stumbled onto one of these by accident, right? You click a link for a sensational news story or a recipe, and you land on a page where the actual text is almost impossible to read.
Right, you're just looking for the ingredients for cooking.
Yes. And instead, it's surrounded by 5 auto-playing videos, sticky banners that follow you as you scroll, and the page just keeps refreshing itself every 10 seconds.
That is the defining characteristic of an MFA. High ad clutter, auto-refreshing ad slots, and remixed, often AI-generated clickbait content.
Just junk.
Complete junk. The financial mechanics are simple. The flight owner buys incredibly cheap, low-quality traffic from social media or those content recommendation widgets at the bottom of articles.
That you won't believe what they look like now, links.
Exactly those. They funnel those users onto their site and then bombard them with highly dense programmatic ads. Because they show so many ads per page visit, they make more money from the advertisers than they spent acquiring the cheap traffic.
It's just a digital sweatshop for impressions. But how pervasive is this? Is it just a few bad actors in the dark corners of the web, or is this a systemic issue?
Oh, it's entirely systemic. The ANA reported that MFA supply grew from representing about 5% of open web auctions in early 2020 to nearly 30% of all web auctions by mid-2023.
30%. Almost a third of the internet's ad auctions are just this garbage.
Yes. Advertisers participating in the ANA research spent an average of 15% of their total programmatic budget on these junk domains. And in extreme cases, brands were blindly directing as much as 42% of their budget toward MFAs.
42% of a multi-million-dollar corporate budget going to fake, unreadable websites. I mean, that borders on fiduciary negligence.
It really does.
So what is the mechanical, actionable step here for the non-technical leader to stop this today?
The immediate action is activating strict inclusion and exclusion lists directly at the DSP level.
Okay.
Because you cannot rely on your agency's generic brand safety filters.
Why not? Don't those block bad sites?
Well, brand safety algorithms look for hate speech or illicit content. They do not flag MFAs because MFAs technically host safe, albeit garbage, content. A recipe for banana bread isn't going to trigger a hate speech filter.
Right, that makes sense.
So you need an explicit exclusion list to block known bad domains. But more importantly, you need a strict inclusion list.
Meaning you dictate exactly the only places your ads are allowed to exist.
Yes. Remember the 44,000 scattered websites from earlier?
The paint on the wall.
Exactly. You must consolidate your inventory. The ANA advises moving away from that completely. Consolidate your buying to just 75 to 100 trusted sellers.
Just 100? That sounds tiny.
Well, those sellers might represent a few thousand highly vetted, high-quality websites. That simple act of massive consolidation achieves your necessary reach while instantly amputating the long tail of fraudulent traffic.
Let me stop you there, though, because I can hear the CMO's panic attack from here. If I tell my CEO, we're cutting our reach from 44,000 sites down to a few thousand, I'm going to look like I'm shrinking our market presence. My cost per impression is going to skyrocket because I'm only buying premium inventory. How do you defend that to a board?
You defend it by explaining that the open web ad market is deeply irrational.
Irrational how?
In a normal economic market, price correlates with quality, right? You pay more for a better product. But the ANA study found little to no correlation between price and quality in open web programmatic.
Interesting.
Because intermediary fees and a concept called bid shading, where algorithms predict the lowest possible winning bid but the platforms secretly keep the spread, you are frequently paying premium prices for garbage inventory.
So the algorithm is actively working it against human reality.
Completely. The DSP algorithms are fed proxy metrics, primarily click-through rates and viewability scores, and MFAs are engineered to game those exact metrics.
Because of the auto-refreshing?
Right. Because they auto-refresh ads while the user is just frantically trying to find the close button, they generate massive viewability scores and accidental clicks. To the algorithm, an MFA site looks like a hyper-engaged, wildly successful placement. So the machine automatically routes more of your budget there.
Wow. So by implementing a strict inclusion list, you are essentially putting a physical fence around the algorithm. You're saying, optimize all you want, but you are only allowed to play inside this yard of 100 trusted publishers.
Exactly. You are taking back structural control from a blind machine.
And cleaning up this digital hygiene leads to a massive physical consequence, which brings us to a crucial secondary benefit of eradicating MFAs, and that is measuring and reducing carbon emissions.
This is such an overlooked area.
It is. I think there is a profound disconnect for most people regarding the environmental impact of the internet. We think it's in the cloud, it's invisible, it doesn't have a tailpipe.
It doesn't have a tailpipe, but it absolutely relies on massive industrial infrastructure. Every single digital ad impression requires server energy. When a web page loads, it triggers a programmatic auction. That auction sends out bid requests to dozens of DSPs across global data centers. Algorithms process the user data, formulate bids, route them back. The exchange declares a winner, and the server delivers the creative asset to the browser.
Oh, in a blink of an eye.
All of that happens in milliseconds, yes, but it requires electricity. Trillions of these bids are processed daily.
So, and 35% of a $26.8 billion spend is going to waste. We are talking about a monumental amount of electricity being burned by server farms just to process phantom auctions for bots.
The environmental data is striking. Ubiquity partnered with Scope 3, which is a firm specializing in measuring digital supply chain emissions, and they established a direct, measurable link between programmatic waste and corporate carbon footprints.
What did they find?
Their research showed that MFA inventory emits 26% more carbon emissions than non-MFA inventory.
26% more. simply because the MFA sites are so heavily loaded with ads and constant auto-refreshing scripts. The servers are just being hammered relentlessly.
Yes, and the contrast is even sharper when you look at quality media. Compared to trusted news sites, MFA inventory emits 52% more carbon emissions.
That is staggering. 52%. You are funding junk, degrading the user experience of the internet, and polluting the physical environment all at the same time.
Which is why this is such a powerful narrative for enterprise leaders. If we connect this to the bigger picture, good digital hygiene perfectly aligns your corporate ESG, environmental, social, and governance goals with hard financial efficiency.
It's a win-win.
It really is.
Yeah.
Eliminating non-essential MFA site traffic provides an immediate, measurable reduction in corporate carbon emissions.
It's the rare scenario where the CFO and the Chief Sustainability Officer get to celebrate the exact same spreadsheet. You can implement end-to-end management of digital media sustainability. You measure, report, and decarbonize your advertising emissions without sacrificing campaign performance.
In fact, your performance improves because you've trimmed the fat.
Right. So the supply chain is cleaned of the obvious junk. But that only solves the foundation. Now we have to ensure the remaining budget, the capital that is actually reaching real premium websites, is reaching the right people.
Yes, which moves us deeper into the audit plan. We need to talk about a fundamental shift in strategy, moving from static demographic targeting to real-time, intent-based metrics.
This is huge.
Because even if you're buying an ad on a premium financial news site, you are still burning money if the person reading the article has absolutely no intention of buying your product.
Exactly. This is the transition from basic financial hygiene to advanced revenue strategy. The team at Intensify outlines 5 clear signs that a programmatic budget is being wasted on the wrong audience.
Let's examine those.
Okay, sign 1, high impressions but low engagement. Your ads are rendering, but nobody is clicking or converting.
Right.
Sign 2, a total disconnect between ad exposure and pipeline growth. You simply can't draw a causal line between your campaign spend and a deal closing.
The math doesn't add up.
Right. Sign 3, you are targeting the account generically rather than the specific buying group within the account. Sign 4, relying heavily on flawed last-click attribution. And sign 5, simply not knowing who is actually in market right now.
And all 5 of those symptoms stem from one fundamental disease, an over-reliance on demographic targeting.
Now, traditional B2B marketing has relied on demographics for decades, right? You build an ideal customer profile, an ICP. You sit in a room and decide, we need to sell our enterprise software to the VP of marketing at a logistics company with over 5,000 employees.
Classic playbook.
Then you instruct the agency and the DSP to find people matching that exact LinkedIn profile. What is the mechanical flaw in that approach today?
The flaw is that demographic data is entirely static.
Meaning it doesn't change day to day.
Right. It only identifies who fits the profile. It tells you absolutely nothing about their current reality. Let's use a scenario. You might successfully serve 50 expensive programmatic ads to a perfectly matched VP of marketing at a massive logistics firm.
Okay. Sounds great so far.
But what if that VP just signed a 3-year contract with your biggest competitor last Tuesday?
Oh. Well, they fit the demographic perfectly, but their intent to buy is 0.
Exactly. Every single impression served to them from that point forward is wasted budget. You are paying a premium to talk to a brick wall.
So how do we fix that? How do we find actual intent?
We shift to signal-based programmatic targeting.
Explain the mechanics of that. How do we measure a signal?
The signal-based targeting leverages AI to analyze real-time behavioral data across the internet. Instead of just looking at a job title, it looks at content consumption patterns.
Like what they're reading.
Right. Is this IP address suddenly downloading multiple white papers on supply chain optimization? Are they attending specialized webinars? Are they surging in search behavior around specific technical keywords?
So you're looking for action, not just a title.
Exactly. You aggregate these digital interactions to understand who is actively researching a solution right now.
So, if we are blindly targeting the VP of marketing based on title alone, we might completely miss the IT director and the procurement officer who have spent the last 48 hours frantically reading reviews about our software category.
Modern enterprise purchases are made by a buying group, not a lone executive.
Right.
Signal-based targeting allows us to identify when an entire account is surging in research activity and map those signals to the specific people actually driving the purchase.
You are fishing in a lake where you know the fish are currently feeding, rather than a lake where they just happen to live.
I love that analogy. It's perfectly accurate.
I want to circle back to one of the signs of waste you mentioned, last click attribution. Why is that specific measurement tool so destructive in a programmatic context?
Oh, because of the timeline of the modern buyer's journey.
What do you mean?
Well, by the time a prospect finally arrives at your website, types in their email, and fills out a Contact Us form, up to 70% of their buying decision has already been made.
70%.
Yes, they have done their silent research, they've read third-party reviews, they've browsed forums, and they have been passively exposed to your programmatic awareness campaigns for the last 6 weeks.
But the very last thing they did before arriving at your site was click a branded search ad on Google.
Right. So Google gets 100% of the credit in the CRM system for generating that sale.
Oh, wow. That's so broken.
Precisely. Last-click attribution makes the entire upper funnel programmatic strategy, the campaigns that influence the first 70% of the journey, look completely worthless.
Because it doesn't show up on the final receipt.
Exactly. If a CFO judges programmatic efficiency purely by last-click conversion, they will inevitably kill the budget, effectively starving the top of their own sales funnel.
So how does a non-technical leader properly evaluate the quality of that engagement? How do you prove the programmatic ads actually caused the sale?
You run holdout tests to prove causal incrementality.
How does that work?
You take a cohort of target accounts. You expose Group A to your programmatic ads, and you intentionally withhold the ads from Group B, the control group.
Simple A/B testing, kind of.
Right. If there is no difference in their subsequent behavior, if Group A doesn't show higher site visits, faster deal velocity, or a higher win rate, then your targeting strategy has failed.
You're just wasting money.
But if Group A converts at a tangibly higher rate than the control group, you have mathematically proven the value of your media spend, completely bypassing the flawed last-click metric.
This is brilliant. We have a cohesive plan forming here. Consolidate to trusted publishers to block MFAs, use real-time intent signals instead of static demographics, and run holdout tests to prove causality.
It's a strong foundation.
But we hit a massive structural wall. Knowing how to target and measure is completely useless if your agency refuses to let you see the data to execute the audit.
The opacity problem again.
Exactly. Which brings us to the most aggressive part of the audit plan. Strategies to challenge agency opacity. How does a non-technical leader bypass these gatekeepers?
You deploy a framework called Zero Trust Programmatic Auditing.
Zero trust. Sounds intense.
It is. The fundamental principle here is that you do not ask the agency for permission, and you absolutely do not rely on their aggregated dashboards.
But how do you bypass the agency if they hold the contractual keys to the DSP and they are the ones executing the actual media buys?
You utilize a new breed of bootstrapped independent diagnostic startups. This is a fascinating evolution in the ad tech ecosystem.
Okay, tell me about these startups.
Because the incumbent giants are so entrenched and protective of their data, the solution had to come from asymmetric actors. These independent diagnostic layers require zero media budget to operate. You do not hand them money to buy ads.
What do you hand them then?
You hand them whatever high-level campaign reporting data you do have access to. The domain delivery reports, the basic PDFs, the sanitized dashboard.
The stuff the agency is willing to give you?
Exactly. These startups ingest those basic reports and deploy highly sophisticated signal-based algorithms to cross-reference them.
I need to understand the mechanics of that. The sources call this deterministic mapping. Break that down for someone who doesn't code. How do they find the waste without the raw log-level data?
Think of deterministic mapping as reverse engineering a crime scene from the outside looking in.
Ooh, okay. I like that.
They take a known signal. Let's say they know the IP address of a localized corporate network that was supposedly targeted by your campaign. They map that known audience composition against the domain delivery logs your agency provided.
So they compare the two?
Yes, they compare traffic patterns, match behavioral signals, and look for anomalies. If your agency claims they delivered 100,000 impressions to financial executives on a Tuesday, but the diagnostic startup looks at the public traffic data of those specific URLs and sees it's physically impossible for that many executives to have visited those sites, they have deterministically proved the fraud.
Wow. They expose the exact contours of the capital leakage without ever needing the agency's raw receipts. They highlight the MFA routing, isolate the non-working media, and identify the exorbitant intermediary fees.
All without needing the agency's permission.
But this brings up a massive internal hurdle. Getting a CFO to approve a brand new, expensive software vendor contract right after you admit your current programmatic campaigns are full of waste, That is going to be an incredibly tough sell.
Which is why the business model of these diagnostic startups is so disruptive. They operate on a shared savings model, also known as asymmetric contracting.
Meaning what?
They do not charge a massive upfront SaaS licensing fee. Instead, they bill a percentage of the working media budget that they successfully recapture for you.
Wait. So rather than fighting a protracted legal war over log-level data with an agency that doesn't want to hand it over, you essentially hire a financial mercenary.
Yes,
And their only paycheck comes directly from the money they rescue from the digital trash.
that is exactly what you do. And this approach appeals immensely to a CFO. Financial success for the vendor is perfectly mathematically aligned with the elimination of fraudulent routing for the enterprise.
That makes total sense.
It transforms what is usually an adversarial software vendor relationship into an aligned capital recovery partnership. If they audit your campaign and don't find any waste, you don't pay them a dime.
The ultimate performance contract. And the stakes here are monumental. The ANA reported $26.8 billion in total waste, but they also noted that simply by applying these hygienic measures, $22 billion in efficiency gains could be realized almost immediately across the industry.
$22 billion, just waiting to be picked up off the floor. And to sustain those massive gains over the long term, leaders are implementing causal media mix modeling, or MMM.
How does that fit in?
You feed the results of your geo-based incrementality holdout tests, like turning off advertising entirely in Chicago, just to establish a baseline of organic sales directly into the MMM.
Oh, I see.
But this allows leaders to identify waste in real time, week by week. You stop optimizing to the false metrics on the DSP dashboard, and you start recalibrating your spend down to actual causal business contribution.
Okay, we are getting incredibly sophisticated here. We are bypassing agencies, utilizing diagnostic algorithms, building causal models, and aligning incentives with shared savings contracts.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
But for some enterprises, especially massive global conglomerates dealing with immense volumes of highly sensitive bid stream data, relying on software and independent audits might still not be enough.
Sometimes you need to go further.
The ultimate step in this audit plan involves bringing a physical reality to a purely digital problem. Let's talk about hardware enforcement.
Yes, this represents the absolute bleeding edge of supply chain governance. It is grounded in an engineering philosophy called restorative engineering.
Let's define restorative engineering in this context, because it sounds like civil engineering.
It shares some DNA. Restorative engineering is the belief that a brilliant prompt or a clever piece of cloud software means absolutely nothing without a resilient physical product behind it.
You need hardware.
Exactly. It is the recognition that human systems, and especially abstract digital architectures, need physical anchors to remain accountable. In the context of programmatic waste, it means forcing a physical choke point on a chaotic, cloud-based digital supply chain.
And what does that physical choke point actually look like?
It's called the Air-Gapped Sentinel Rack, or the AGSR.
The AGSR.
It is a localized, heavy piece of network hardware, an actual physical appliance, that is installed directly onto the enterprise's physical server rack inside their own corporate data center.
I love this. An actual metal box bolted to a rack to manage digital advertising. Because the fundamental vulnerability of relying on software solutions in the cloud is that the agency and the ad tech vendors also live in the cloud. They control the environment.
You're playing on their turf.
Right. The AGSR intercepts outbound marketing bid requests at the packet level before they ever leave the corporate firewall. It operates entirely independently of the agency's software.
Let's break down how it actually works once it's bolted to the rack, because the mechanics are fascinating. It operates through 4 primary mechanisms.
Okay, what's the first?
The first is physical isolation. By sitting on the enterprise rack, it provides an air-gapped environment for processing sensitive corporate bid stream data. The agency cannot log into it, they cannot alter its parameters, and they cannot obscure its findings.
It's untouched. The second mechanism is algorithmic filtration. I want to spend a second on the heuristics here. As the marketing automation platform attempts to execute a bid out to the DSP, the AGSR intercepts it.
Right before it leaves.
Right. It applies signal-based heuristics, which are basically fast, pragmatic rule sets designed to solve complex routing problems. To flag MFA routing and arbitrage vectors in milliseconds, it stops the bid before the financial transaction ever executes.
Which is incredible. And the third mechanism is hardware-level verification. Because the physical machine controls the outbound HTTP packet, it generates cryptographic proof of supply path optimization.
Cryptographic proof, so it can't be faked.
Exactly. It creates an immutable cryptographically signed ledger of exactly where the budget was permitted to go. It completely eliminates the concept of the sanitized PDF report.
And the fourth mechanism, which really speaks to the mechanical engineering roots of the concept, is biomimetic cooling. It uses advanced thermal management to operate silently within the enterprise environment, demanding no extra infrastructural cooling from the data center.
It is entirely self-sufficient, just humming away on the rack.
You know, it reminds me of how we secure airports. For years, we might have trusted airlines to just ask people if they pack their own bags, relying on goodwill and basic policy.
Right, the honor system.
Yeah. But eventually, we realized the vulnerability was too high, so we built the TSA. We installed physical, heavy X-ray scanners right at the choke point. We stopped relying on software and policy, and we built a physical machine to inspect every single passenger before they get to the runway. Here, we are using a physical steel box to X-ray every single financial packet of our digital supply chain.
That is a perfect analogy. What's fascinating here is how the monetization and authority of this approach completely changed the dynamic.
How so?
When you walk into a boardroom with another cloud software pitch, you are just one of 100 vendors asking for sauce budget. But the physical presence of enterprise hardware establishes immediate, tangible authority.
It's real. You can touch it.
Right. The CFO doesn't sign a nebulous software license. They sign a hardware-as-a-service lease. The machine sits quietly on the rack, automatically recapturing the capital, generating a verifiable return on investment that no dashboard can fake.
It radically shifts the power dynamic. You are no longer politely asking the agency for permission to see your own data. You are physically intercepting the data and dictating the terms of engagement before the money ever leaves the building.
You are restoring empirical truth to the enterprise machine. You are closing the structural efficiency gap by bridging physical mechanics with digital logic.
Let's bring this all together. We have covered an immense amount of ground today, exploring the depths of this $26.8 billion crisis. For the strategic leader listening right now, the path forward is clear.
Extremely clear.
You must eradicate the made-for-advertising sites by implementing strict inclusion lists, consolidating your buying to trusted publishers. This immediately stops the bleeding of your budget into digital arbitrage vehicles, while simultaneously reducing your corporate carbon emissions by cutting out the server energy required to process millions of fraudulent ad calls.
You also need to shift your targeting from static demographic profiles to real-time intent signals. Stop guessing who is in market based on job titles and start targeting the buying group based on their actual digital behavior, validating that strategy with causal holdout tests rather than flawed last-click attribution.
And when it comes to visibility, you challenge agency opacity by utilizing zero-trust programmatic auditing. Bring in independent, bootstrap diagnostic startups on a shared savings model to bypass the aggregated dashboards.
Don't trust the PDFs.
Never trust the PDFs. And if the scale of your enterprise demands absolute cryptographic truth, you look to hardware enforcement. Deploy an air-gapped Sentinel rack to intercept bids at the packet level, creating a physical choke point against digital waste.
The broader takeaway here requires a profound shift in perspective. Enterprise leaders must stop viewing media buying as a dark art managed by external agencies and start viewing it as a highly mechanical supply chain that requires exact, engineered governance.
The reason this matters to you is urgent. In an economy where top-line growth is becoming increasingly difficult and expensive to acquire, you cannot afford to let your capital evaporate. The most efficient value creation strategy available to you right now is the technological recapture of capital that is actively leaking from within your own organization.
It's right there.
You don't need to sell more products to find this money. You just need to stop the ad tech intermediaries from taking it. Which brings us to a final thought to mull over. As we build increasingly massive, highly decentralized digital infrastructures, have we forgotten the power of physical accountability? If billions of dollars can simply vanish into the cloud, masked by complex algorithms and intentional information asymmetry, let me rephrase that, masked by complex algorithms and intentional information asymmetry, perhaps the future of corporate transparency isn't going to be found in another piece of SaaS software. Perhaps it's going to be found in a heavy, unblinking piece of hardware sitting quietly on your server rack, demanding the truth.